argument for God's existence is the teleological argument. And this can be thought about in terms of having all the parts required to make an airliner, all the bolts, all the rivets, all the wiring, all the panels, and you throw those into a mixer, a huge mixer, and you set it to run for a couple of million years. At the end of that couple of million years, you would not anticipate coming back to the mixer and finding a fully assembled jetliner. It just wouldn't occur to you. And that's because the second law of thermodynamics and entropy indicate that in nature, things tend to break down rather than get built up. So we're used to things rusting out, to things falling apart and things breaking. So that creates a small puzzle for us. Why is it that in our world we find that there are things which give the appearance of having been built or assembled with some sort of purpose? We have order, we have complexity, and we have apparent purpose in a lot of the things around us. For instance, we think about DNA, which is an incredibly complex coding system that allows living organisms to reproduce themselves. We can look at the eye and see how complicated the eye is and how the things within the eye work independently of one another, and yet they allow us to be able to see. We have large balanced ecosystems like coral reefs and the Arctic tundra and any number of things which give evidence of animal life working together to create an environment that they can all live in. So why do you see this in the world that we live in rather than chaos and just things breaking down? We'd have to ask ourselves if rather this is just common random chance that has created all these things, or whether or not it is an indication that there is an intelligent designer to everything. Aristotle thought when he looked around, Aristotle is a Greek philosopher, by the way, from a long time ago, thought when he looked around that everything pointed to a guiding intelligence and that things had an intention, a purpose. They were not just there accidentally. Thomas Aquinas thought much the same. He saw that the order of the universe pointed to a guiding intelligence. William Paley became famous for his watchmaker's analogy, which is basically if you were stumbling down a path and you tripped over a watch and you got leaned down and you picked that watch up and you looked at it, you would not think, I wonder how that grew there or how that made itself while it was in the pathway. No, you'd think, of course, that there was a watchmaker. And he said, in essence, that the complexity of our universe is much the same. When we come across that complexity, it didn't just happen. There was a planning that took place. Now, David Hume, who was a rather famous atheist or skeptic, he said that natural processes might rightly explain all of these things, but I would make the argument that it really doesn't provide enough information to allow us to make those assumptions. There appears to be a purpose in nature. The human eye has lenses, it has a retina, it has nerves which provide for us vision. Ecosystems, they're all interconnected. If you take one thing out, the system fails. A man by the name of Michael Behe caused a considerable amount of turmoil in the scientific community because he is a microbiologist. As he looked at things, he came to the conclusion that there are systems that show irreducible complexity. That is, if there's one part missing, the system could not have developed in a logical, evolutionary sort of manner. One example of that would be a flagellum on a bacteria. If any one part of it was missing, the rest of it wouldn't work. So there's no evolutionary plan to maintain something that doesn't work until, well, it finally does work. Blood clotting would be much the same. There's criticism of that, much the same as Hume, which says, well, gee, maybe, we don't know how, but maybe things just gradually developed through evolution. A gentleman by the name of William Dembski and Stephen Meyer both have a system that they call intelligent design, and they look at DNA. They recognize the complex coding that takes place in that DNA, and they make the claim that it would be impossible for this complex coding to have occurred by accident. It gives evidence of an intelligent design taking place. Now we have a lot of examples of that. If we want to stop and think about things in our world, there's a solar system. We just happen to be located in a perfect place for life to be in existence, and that just there are so many factors that go into that: the tilt of the Earth, the moon's influence, the distance from the sun, all sorts of things. The human eye, we mentioned that a couple of times. The fact that all the parts work together to allow us to be able to see. The flagella, bacterial flagella, we mentioned that because Michael Behe had talked about how it couldn't have developed sequentially, it had to be planned. DNA, same thing, an incredibly precise code that codes all of life on Earth, and it is more complex than any computer code that we have. If you look at bees, the honeybees, they communicate by way of a dance to show where food is so that everybody can go get food. That gives the appearance of having been planned. That is a designed feature. A bat echolocation, much the same. Their ears allow them to hunt by sound, and that appears to be a very complex and designed system. A fish called the cuttlefish, as it slides across surfaces, can change its color to blend into its environment. Again, an apparent adaptive sort of thing that would have required an intelligent design. Birds fly tremendous distances using the sun, stars, and magnetic fields. That appears again to be a design sort of function. So basically the claim is that the world that we live in today has enough evidence of design that we should appreciate the fact that there must be a designer, and that designer would be God. So it's this powerful argument. The argument against it, of course, is the idea that things have evolved, but that argument isn't well enough designed to be able to support the weight, the burden that's put up upon it. There is today a search for a new neo-Darwinian model that would better take into account the evidence. I think the best evidence, however, is that the world we live in gives us enough information so that we can assume that there is an intelligent designer that has designed us.